Yeah, no, go ahead, you're running.
Oh, I know, that's surprised. People I find them like I'm definitely your thing. I'm gonna do that too.
Well, it's always so long as it's.
Oh, okay. There's a cat speaking and I'm not going to say, oh, this is one of the things that's it says it's another thing, but they told that they believe that about that. And they didn't believe that again. Well, not going to so it's something like that. Far food trouble thing never should have let that I guess. That's not good. Yeah, I don't think that's oh, it's just like files, you know, just read that. I think the files. That's the same question, same such simple. But I was accused of not knowing which are was when we come to the so go there shares the money just take care of what. So there are some yeah, Oh, Sam.
Okay. Okay, well, everybody, it is 6 o'clock and we're gonna start on time. So there probably will be people wandering in and out. I'm Becky Payne, I'm with the Peace Education Center, so welcome to all of you. It's good to see you tonight. We've been waiting for this a long time. We've had some snafus getting it set up, but I'm glad we're finally getting this done. I've been very anxious to get to this program myself, because I sure can use any tips I can get right now to get through these current times. And let's see, we have people on Zoom. It looks like a lot of people are using that option, and people in the room. One little side note, we have a choir coming in that's gonna start practicing in the other room at around 7, they'll come in, so if you hear a little singing, that's them later on. They said they try to be quiet until we get, because sing quietly, that. So, the talk tonight is on balancing our mental health as we move toward a world of peace and justice. Trying to be able to focus on a personal, social, and national level is imperative to keep us and our society moving forward. We'll talk about how we can develop a consciousness about how to balance who we are with what our world is presenting to us. And our presenter tonight is Lauri J. Rowe, MA, licensed psychotherapy counselor, if I can get my phrases out, working through professional psychotherapy services in Marshall, Michigan. So thank you so much, Lauri, for driving up here. We had to cancel it once before because a big thunderstorm came in, and driving from Marshall didn't seem like a good idea. And apologies to people who might have come for that event and found the door locked and the sign on the door saying that we were canceling it. So I'm sorry if you drove out in that night, but we are here tonight. So let's start. And thank you, Lauri, for joining us.
Well, thank you, Becky, for having me. And again, my name is Lauri. And if you want to refer to me as she, her pronouns. Little bit about my background in political activism. I started back in the late 70s, early 80s with the anti-nuclear movement. Maybe some of you might remember Brown T. Rowe. That was a college sort of campus movement that was going on at the time. I was very involved in that and was one of the founding members down at Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana, with the Muncie Peace Network. That I believe is still going. I was down there a couple weeks ago for their June 14th activism that they had there. That was pretty fun to meet up with some friends who are still there doing the activism. But mainly I started with the anti-nuclear movement, moved into environmental movement and women's rights movements. So over the years, I've kind of transitioned from issue to issue. Very active, of course, in my 20s, started developing, I don't know, family interests. So the 30s and 40s kind of, plateaued out, although we got our kids very much involved. I'll tell you a little bit more about them maybe later. And then in the last, of course, since 2015 or so, have been real active in what's going on in our country as well. So in tonight's work, I have to tell you, I wrote a great outline on this, and then we canceled the last one. So over the course of the last month, I run across something that I think, oh, that'll be good. I post it, no, put it on the page. Post, no, put it on the page. Oh, that's good too. Post, no, put it on the page. So you're not getting a really polished lecture, because I started looking at this a few days ago, and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna have to add some of this stuff and, filter in some stuff. So I want to make clear for you that if there's anything that I say or something that you want more clarity on, or you have something that you want to share about what's being said, please feel free to, let me know. And this will become more towards, maybe towards the choir time at 7 o'clock, more like a group discussion than an actual lecture, and we won't be bothered by the noise so much, right? So, I had a really great, a good friend of mine who is an Episcopal minister, did a, excellent sermon this past Sunday. And he brought up some topics, he's not what he would call it, he said he doesn't preach politics from the pulpit, but he's always talking about politics from the pulpit without talking about politics from the pulpit. I think some of you know how that rolls with folks. So he brought up 3 things, and I'm going to use this whiteboard if that's okay. I want to keep my hands busy, and it also keeps me a little bit more focused. But I think you'll appreciate that real well. So he said the 3 things that are really plaguing us mental health wise are the issues of cynicism. Let's see if I can work. I'm a little bit nervous about the board here. Cynicism, fear, and indifference. Is my writing good enough for y'all? Okay. So as long as I say the words out loud, I think you'll be able to read them. Okay. So the 3 things that, and I think he's correct. I think we struggle with cynicism, fear, and indifference as working in the political activism field. So, and with anything for a long period of time. We'll get into the long period of time in a bit here. So he suggested, and I'm putting this in this order for a reason, okay? That to combat cynicism, there has to be an element of faith. To combat fear, we have an element of hope and developing hope. And to combat indifference, we have love. I would also put in with this compassion, and we'll be talking more about doing work with compassion for ourselves and for others a bit later. So to combat these, we need these. Now, we all define these a little bit differently, right? So faith, what I have down here, faith is something that I would define as whatever you get your power from. What is that internal source of power for you? For some people, it has a religious connotation. For some people, it's more of an energetic connotation. Okay, so developing that faith, and a part of what we'll talk about later too, in terms of self-care, the way we get in touch with that is through what I call resting. Not real complex, not a big psychological term there, but rest. And I'll define that a little bit more. Hope. Hope is what we want to move towards. So if we're always focusing on what we're against, we often miss out on what we're moving for. You know, Martin Luther King said, I have a dream, not I have a plan, right? So he started with a dream. And so if we don't start with a dream, then where do we place our hope? Where are we focusing our actions towards? Love or compassion is another way to help beat indifference. And see, I think indifference comes out as overwhelm. As a psychotherapist, I would think that, right? So overwhelm and indifference to me mean about the same thing. Okay, so how do we fight that? It's through love or compassion of ourselves, and then we can expand it out to others, right? So again, we're moving, what we see as being a problem a lot of times in the political action field are those 3 things: the cynicism, fear, indifference. What we want to move towards, faith, hope, love, or compassion. Okay? So as I'm talking this evening, you're gonna see me refer back a lot to this kind of speech, okay, this kind of format. Okay, so before I get too far, I'm calling your breath to the board, I kind of want to know a little bit about who I'm talking with here. You know, how many of you, for example, were doing political action work? Let's see, and I don't mean to, you know, out anybody on age or whatever, so. But I'm curious, how many of you were active or aware, let's put it that way, in the 60s, 70s during Vietnam, Johnson, Nixon, those kinds? Okay. Please keep, if you can. I was gonna have you stand, but let's not do that, it's a little hot. Okay, but if you could sort of keep your hand at least rested and up, that would be great. How many of you became aware or politically active from about 75 to 80? That would be Carter, the end of the Vietnam War, environmental movement was becoming. Anybody start their activism during that time? Okay. So how about those in this was the fun time, from 1980 to 1992. Let's just group Reagan and Bush together, right? How many started during that time? Okay. How about, let's go from 9/11 or 2000 to about 2008. So we're talking mainly George W. Bush, okay? You started during that time?
Actually close to the 92.
Okay, okay. Well, I skipped Clinton because everything was good during that. Not really, but my good students. For many other reasons, but 2008 to 2015, Obama, how many of you got kind of activated during Obama's? Yeah, some of the things going on there. Then we had, of course, Trump in 2016, and what has been transitioning during this time, Trump, Biden, and now elected Trump era thinking. How many of you got started there? Okay. Okay, so I want you to notice that pretty much everybody said you can put your hands down now, thanks, so. Thank God I didn't have you stand, right, that whole time. So you can see that this is a collective of a lot of experiences. When I thought about, you know, how is it that I can contribute to what's going on now? I was thinking initially along the lines of, okay, I gotta organize, I gotta get groups together, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. Which is what I was doing in my late teens, 20s, early 30s, right? That's not for me to do because the voices and the needs of this generation and things going forward are going to be beyond me. So what can I do to help with that? So I'm hoping, you know, things like holding space, giving support where I can give support, showing up to things other people organize, you know, things like that. Those are things I can contribute, right? So I wanted to sort of get an idea of who I was talking to. I'm sorry about the people on Zoom. I have you raise your hands. Hey there. I see mainly names. I've got a couple of faces up there, but mainly names and stuff. If there's a point where you want to talk, just unmute yourself, make a noise. And I'll see if I can get to you, okay? Because technology is great, okay? All right, so we talked a little bit about finding out what we are for as opposed to focusing on what we're against. And I wanted to share a little story from back when I was working in South Carolina with the Physicians for Social Responsibility. And I was a part of their team that did speech writing. And they asked me occasionally to go out and do talks. And I got asked to do a talk to a 5th grade class. And the issue for Physicians for Social Responsibility was nuclear proliferation. So I got my charts together, not made on the computer, by the way, but they were pretty nifty little poster boards, you know, things like that. Here's the center, ground zero. If you're in that center, boom, you're gone. If you're out here, boom, it's really bad. And if you're out here, you might live, but you're gonna hurt really bad. That's it in a nutshell, right? So I had all that, and I had the stats on how much money we were spending as opposed to social programs, you know. And I go into this classroom, thank goodness there was someone speaking before me who was a firefighter, by the way, who was talking to them about fire safety. And I came in on this talk, and I'm sitting in the back of the class as he's telling all the awful things that happened during the fire, and his experiences when he's got the fire call, and how bad it was, and you never know, so never light a match, never get around fire, because you could burn your whole house down, and these kids were traumatized. And they're sitting there, and I'm thinking, I can't follow this with, here's ground zero. So in the course of the introduction for the saying goodbye to the firefighter and my introduction, I had to come up with something. So fifth grade is what, 11, 12 years old, right? So what do 11 and 12-year-old kids want in their life? So I started the talk off by saying, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do with it? I'd buy ice cream. I'd buy out Toys R Us. I, do all this stuff. And as that kind of grew, it's like, I would make sure my friends got something to eat. Heck, I'd make sure there was food for everybody. I would, and these kids started rolling with things that were really fantastic dreams. I was very pleased that they were the future kind of ideas, And so what we ended with, and we'll do a little of this tonight, not specifically this exercise, was a call to action. Now, I know we've all heard of calls to action. Ours are going to be a little bit different for this evening because we're focusing on balancing our mental health, right? But their call to action was, what do you want to write the president and tell him to spend the money for? And we had pictures and we had letters and we had a great time. And nobody, so far as I was concerned, needed to know that if they were in the middle of a bomb, that they wouldn't be here anymore, right? And they left feeling more empowered. So part of what I want to be able to contribute to the movement these days is, where can I empower people? And since I'm a psychotherapist, wow, there you go. How many of you are in the healthcare field or have been in the healthcare field, helping professions, things like that? Okay. So you know what it's like when your heart goes out for somebody, right? And you want to be of service. So we're going to try to do that and come across some ideas that might be helpful for you. To give you kind of a background on a theoretical basis, so that we can all sort of think about, on the same picture term, because I'm also a very visual person. There is a model of psychotherapy. Let's see if I can get some circle here. Yep. This is the circle. Let's see. Here we go. I think I have the right side of the marker. Anyway, so this is the whole person. Okay. This model is called psychosynthesis, by the way. And in psychosynthesis, the theory is there are three parts of the individual. Okay. There is the physical part, the mental, emotional part, and then what people call, or the maker of this particular model calls the spiritual. And I added in the energetic part. Okay, so if this is the whole person, okay, and you'll notice that in between these sections, I put dotted lines because we don't just come from one part or stay in one part. We kind of move around and things sort of seep into one area from the other area, right? This is the whole person. In this theory, this is consciousness, immediate consciousness. So you have the whole person. This is what you're conscious of at any given time. It's a very small part of who you are, okay? And according to this model, what indicates health is this consciousness being able to move throughout the person and be conscious at any given time of different areas that it needs to focus on, okay? Now, I don't know about you, I do know a lot of people that seem to be more conscious here. They're more physical. They talk in physical terms, they act in physical terms. I don't know, what do you think a person who's so focused in the physical would act in or do? What are some of the things they would do? Sports. Going to the gym, working out, running triathlons. Those people have a lot of their immediate consciousness in this area. What about people who are in their heads, as we like to say? What kinds of things do you think they're involved with? Academia, yes. Do you work in academia?
Okay.
Yes, okay. Anyone else?
Writing.
Writing, yes. Being an author, spending time in that area. Computers. Computers, wow, yeah, okay. Yeah. How about people who are in the spiritual energetic? Give me a, what would you envision them being like? Artistic? Yogi, maybe a little new agey, you know, a little bit out there maybe. Anybody knows people like that? I do. Okay. So we can take this immediate consciousness and place it. Hi, come on. I saw something outside of it. Okay. This immediate consciousness can be anywhere at any time. It can get stuck in places, okay? That immediate consciousness will also indicate how we react to things, okay? Being aware of what we're putting our focus on is going to give us our reaction to things that are going on outside. Yeah.
Just looking at mental and emotional,
Uh-huh.
there's quite a difference between mental and emotional. How do you
Yeah.
And the biggest problem for the person is being a person is stop my mental stuff and stick with how I feel.
How you feel, yeah. So one of the areas of studies that I did was in somato-emotional release work. And one of the theories behind that is that the mind is not just up here, it's in every cell of the head. And your mind has 3 sections here. It's got the logical, new brain area, it's got the limbic system where a lot of our emotions are kept, and then it's got the brainstem, right? Where all of our automatic reptilian things are. Why I put them together in there and why the psychosynthesis people put them together in there is that they all are manifestations of thought. And even though emotions may be more somatic based, the mental processes and the reactions that are emotional have a mental thought behind them. For example, people talk about, oh, I get angry. I'm angry all the time. You know, and I just respond with anger. What came right before the anger? Well, a thought. It could be another emotion like fear. Fear of what? Fear of, let's say, incompetency or something. Or that fear of being humiliated. Those things like humiliation and incompetency are also thoughts. So it's very hard to sort of separate out the mental and the emotional. Can someone be more mental and less emotionally based? Absolutely. Just like you can be more physical and less spiritually based.
And the mental, both the mental, you know, the mental thing, like along the lines of like language, thought, like the dialogue. And emotions all kind of seem to occur like right here, like.
Yes, they can. However, I also want to tell you that in some of the work that I did with somato-emotional release work, is that it's also everywhere else. Okay, every single cell has a wisdom to it. Going back to biology 101 or high school biology, you remember we have a cell and you have nucleus of the cell and those little jittery things that are around. I don't remember what that is. But the outside of the cell membrane, moves the cell around. It had the little cilia things that were floated around. Am I getting on the is there any biology here? So I'm just massacring that. Okay, so as you think of the cell, what do you think the brain of the cell is? Anybody?
The nucleus.
The nucleus? The nucleus? Okay. I'm gonna tell you the brain of the cell is the membrane. The membrane detects if that cell is in a toxic situation or not and moves it out of the toxic situation. The membrane knows when it needs nutrients and when it needs to get rid of garbage. The nucleus, which carries the DNA for the cell, that's the map. Okay. So the nucleus is the map. If I had a map of Michigan here and asked you, what is this? Most people would respond, Michigan. Like, no, this isn't Michigan. If you're out on a road, if you can get out on the road, there was a lot of construction getting here, by the way. If you get out on a road and it's not on this map, are you still in Michigan? Well, of course you are. Right? So the nucleus is the map for the cell. Okay, that's a little off topic. That wasn't on one of my post-it notes, by the way, but just know that the emotions and how we react is not just an up here thing. It is a whole body thing. Okay, so our reaction to something or someone may be different than the next person who comes in contact with that situation, because their mind, which is the entire body, has a different perception and a different history with that. Which leads me into, as I'm thinking about it, let me make sure I've got it here. It's on the next page, on another post-it note. Okay. So, back to this model real quickly though. Where are you right now? Where's your immediate consciousness? For some
Mental, because I'm trying to
Take
focus
in
on what
information,
is
right? Yeah, most people would say mental. How many people are comfortable in your shoes right now? How about in the chairs? Is it hot in here to anybody? Okay. Did I just move you into the physical a little bit? Yeah, your immediate consciousness went into your physical. Okay, getting you into the energetic may be a little bit more difficult, but I think you can see what I mean by the movement of the immediate consciousness. Any questions about this? Where do you think you spend the majority of your time? Where's your immediate consciousness hang out for the most part?
Mental.
Mental? Mental, emotional? You know what we can do here? Is we can take this section and take, your consciousness is over here, but in the middle section.
Something that is called internal family.
Oh, the internal family systems.
Exactly.
Yeah. Spiritual energetics, again, that comes with, and I'll get into it a little bit more with self-care, is the recognition that we are human beings not human doings. Okay, there's an element of our existence that has to be. Okay, to be able to do. Okay, so keep that in mind as we get more and more down the rabbit hole with mental health and staying in the field of political activity. Okay. Okay. Oh, the other thing too about being able to move your immediate consciousness, it will give you a different perspective on any given situation. Okay. When you're at a rally or marching and everybody's chanting the same thing and you've got a rhythm going with this. This is creating a rhythm of consciousness that is physical as well as energetic. Okay. That's something to keep in mind. We're moving all the time. We do tend to stay, depending on what we do with our lives. And we're more familiar with one area than the other, I would say, okay? But that's something to keep in mind. Okay, and any questions? How about anyone from Zoom? You have any questions on any of this? No? Okay. I'm trying to. Okay, so if there is a couple of things that I really want you to take from this meeting, it's this. Suffering is not sustainable. Okay. Suffering is not sustainable. Okay. Exhaustion is impermanent. What do you mean by that? Okay, good question. So let's do a little bit of how would you all define what is suffering for yourselves? Okay, what is suffering? How does it present itself?
Agonizing grief.
Agonizing grief. Grief is the key word there, yeah. Grief, loss. Yeah. Anxiety. Anxiety, yes. Worrying about the future, worrying about things we can't control. Yeah.
Fear of dissatisfaction.
Fear and feelings of dissatisfaction. Yeah, that's suffering. Yes, it is. Yeah.
Works right there, not quite. Not being able to make progress is,
Feelings
Stagnant.
of stagnant, yeah, yeah. None of those states are sustainable. Sustaining stuckness, sustaining agonizing grief, sustaining anxiety, that is not sustainable. Those things are not sustainable. Exhaustion from being overly anxious, from dealing with grief, from dealing with dissatisfaction and, feeling of stuckness. Those feelings are impermanent. Exhaustion is impermanent. There's ways we can deal with exhaustion. But I do want to make the point that suffering is not sustainable. Okay. So for those people who are suffering, who are struggling, what can we do for them? Those of you in the helping field, what do you do? People who are suffering, struggling.
When I think of suffering and it being unsustainable, the first thing that comes to my mind is the people in Gaza. And
Yeah.
what can we do to help them?
Right.
You're talking about what can we do to help ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't relate to that when I think of that. I don't feel like I'm
Right.
suffering because
Right.
I have house and water.
Right. And that's one of the quirky things about suffering and struggling. We cannot and sustain comparative suffering. Everybody's suffering is different. What can we do? That's a whole human doing thing. We can get into some of that. And I'm assuming that most of you here are already doing a lot of that. What I wanna do is, what do you do for yourself concerning that? And if you engage in judging, I cannot feel suffering because people are suffering worse than I am, then we need to come back to you. Okay? Because I do think treating ourselves with compassion, for as much as we expect to have compassion for other people, is imperative. It's love your neighbor as yourself. Well, there's not a 1-2 thing to this. But there's simultaneous, it has to happen at the same time. Okay? So yes, it's hard to watch other people struggle and die. And suffer. What are we doing about that? My guess is you are giving yourself information, you're keeping up on the information. You're putting out as much as you can in terms of activity and resources, be that energetic resources, financial resources, or whatever. Okay? By the way, I forgot to mention this early on, I see political activism as also being reposting memes. I see political activism as putting yourself out there in different circumstances. I also see activism as sitting with someone as they talk about what they're going to and not taking it on. And that's hard. Because we're not really taught from this age up how to care for ourselves. We're taught, you're a good girl, you're a bad girl, you make me feel angry, you make me feel this, you make me, so you get this connection that what I do affects other people to the point where I have to be everything for everybody. When the reality is, we need to be for ourselves as well. I don't buy the, oh, I gotta get myself together first and then I'll go out and save the world. No, you do it at the same time. Okay? So having that compassion with suffering is very important. Learning how to hold space for other people as well as yourself is very important. Okay? How many of you are familiar with the phrase of holding space? Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about how you envision holding space? What does that look like for you? Anybody? I keep looking at you, sorry. You're on my left.
Well, and the example of Gaza is, it's knowing, and empathizing with what they're doing and. But you don't have to beat yourself up over it, like,
Well,
that's not.
Yeah. And there's things that we can do, we can, there's other things we can do that are.
Me suffering isn't going to relieve, make their suffering less.
Exactly, well, yeah, that's a good point. There are ways that we talk about how can I contribute to more well-being in Gaza? Well, isn't supporting a local group that is doing a lot of the activities to keep this up as an issue important? Where do you tell the young leader of the organization, you are doing a really great job. I'm really impressed with your work. I consider that political activism. Okay.
So you can also turn that to ourselves, how many times do you give yourself? And I keep looking at you, said it, I'm sorry. How many times do you give yourself kudos for the fact that you passed on information to someone who could do something about it? Probably not often. Okay.
This is what they do, but if they ignore you, it's.
Well, okay, I was gonna get a little snarky there, but I pulled back myself, honestly. So, but yeah, I get that, okay. So,
I still don't know what you mean by holding space.
holding space, oh, I love that term, and I learned it when I was learning, somato-emotional release therapy. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. Actually, I studied it, through a craniosacral therapy program. And John Upledger was my teacher back in the 90s. He actually is from Michigan State, was with the osteopathic school here, went down to Florida, formed an organization, the school, teaching craniosacral therapy, and hit upon the idea that craniosacral therapy, being a very light touch therapy, was also unwinding emotions
Yes,
in a person's body.
I just had cranial sacral today.
Oh, you did?
From my.
Your aura looks really great. Oh,
My real daughter died in a car accident when she was 20 years ago, it was 40 years ago. This person was my daughter and she lives in the house with me and my daughter.
and she does craniosacral therapy.
She cranial sacral is her living. At the house, and she used to do massage. But she's 60 now. And what she does to her hands, so she's doing massage is intolerable. She does marvelous. Her name is Julie O'Day. And she does fantastic cranial sacral.
Okay.
You feel the energy inside the body. You feel like it's yourself.
And one of the things I liked as I did that particular program is that is something we can do for ourselves. Holding space was something I learned in that program, and that, yes, we have physical touch going on, but we were directing what was going on in the person's body. We were following what was going on in the person's body. Okay, and then we would also be aware of the movement of, not to get too deep in the weeds here, but the movement of the cerebral spinal fluid. There were different indications during that time that meant you were significantly somewhere, whether that person was conscious of it or not. We were just holding that space. We don't go in and say, sounds like this feels like when you fell off your tricycle and you were wearing a red dress and that's why you hate red now. You know, that kind of thing. That's more directing therapy, right? So holding space is being a non-judgmental, ego-subordinate presence with someone who is working through something.
Well, that's interesting because when Julie's doing cranial sacral, I used to say, well, you're pushing my energy away, so I'm not doing a thing, I'm following.
She's probably, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that's the pains go like this to my body. So she's following where the energy,
Yeah,
and I can begin to feel my own energy as opposed to
yeah.
the other parts of my body.
Well, a lot of the theory behind that work is to help people get in touch with that inner wisdom, that inner consciousness. You know, for that immediate consciousness. And so bringing the unconscious and the subconscious into your immediate conscious makes your ability to react and act on it more helpful. Okay? Does that help at all? Okay, we'll talk more about that then. Okay,
Say that part, the definition that you gave over, yeah, because I think that's just so important.
okay, the holding space.
Yes.
It's the ability to hold the space in a non-judgmental, ego-subordinate, following kind of way with the person or people that you're with.
So the big thing in that, being able to express what's inside without having a number of things that would fix it, or what they did not doing later.
Absolutely.
So it's just waiting for them to.
Yeah, and you might get perceptions or what I call intuitive hits, but it's not your place to tell them what it is. To empower someone is not to tell them what to do. To empower someone is to help them find that within themselves. Okay, to find that energy. A lot of times, when I'm doing therapy, I don't feel like I'm doing anything other than holding space because the people I'm working with are very wise people. They may not be conscious of it at the time, but they are very wise. So therapy becomes, for me anyway, about holding space. Now, do I slip up and go into mom mode and say, what the heck are you doing that for? Don't do that, do this. Yeah, I do. Okay, yeah, well, that's my human tool. Instead of human being, okay. We also have the ability to do that with ourselves, within ourselves. We don't necessarily have to have someone else do that for us. So two of the issues, and when we get to self-care, that I want to emphasize. Step one is rest. If someone asks me, what can I do to help with my anxiety, or what's a good self-care thing for me to do? First thing I say is rest. What do you do to rest? Throw out some things you do that are resting.
Take it out.
Take a nap.
Actually gardening, not having.
Gardening. Walk through the woods.
Getting up and doing exercise. I
Exercise.
advise myself.
Mhm.
Never exhausted. You gotta get into a physical therapy class.
Mhm.
Into that experience.
Mhm.
You can understand that. For the
Okay,
Read books.
read books.
Read books.
Okay. Anyone else? How do you rest?
Music.
Music. Making music, hearing music, listening to music?
All of the above.
Okay,
Silence. I like silence.
silence. Okay, so let me talk to you. There are two ways of resting. And I want this not to come across as this one's right and this one's wrong. Okay, because I just don't do that. I'm not that into listening, although I seem to be in my notes, but okay. Resting is about being silent. It's about being. Let's take a moment in Buddhist practice. We've got a meditation where we spend, and I won't make you do it right now, but we spend 5 minutes where we focus on what we see. Of course, we're seated, we're staring downward, and you just focus on what you see. You block everything out and you only focus on what you see, and there's a dot there. And if I stare at that long enough, it changes, it does some things, right? And then the next step is focus on things that I hear. Okay, the next step is focus on things that I taste in my mouth. Next one is things that I smell. And when you're having to focus on specific items, you're silent, you're resting, and you're focused. In transcendental meditation, they have you focus on a mantra. Okay, 3 or 4 syllable mantra. So that quietness, that bringing your mind to a quiet place where there's no thought in transcendental meditation is sort of a goal there. Okay. So there is that silence and being. Then there's things like, and I'm just gonna call it doing. The gardening. The reading. If you're younger, the video games, although I can't quite get there with my head, but my son tells me that that's true. Doing. That's also known in my field as distraction. Okay. What's another word? I think it's a nasty word. I'll remember it right off the bat. But so, huh?
Avoidance.
Yes, that's it. That's it. It wasn't. Okay, but it did have the,
At least you're not suffering.
okay, yes, yes, this is true. So. I'm gonna tell you, in my field, distractedness and avoidance get a real bad rap. Okay, denial does too. I think they're all very legitimate coping mechanisms, honestly, okay? But know that really your goal in resting is to just be with yourself. And sometimes that takes a lot of compassion to be able to be with yourself. Sometimes you don't wanna be with yourself. But if you can be with yourself with compassion, I think you're gonna find some, some ability to get through the suffering. Okay,
Good job,
with jogging now,
because that sounds like my students are good too.
yeah.
I don't do anything.
Okay, my daughter very much is into running, and she said she gets some very great mental ideas. She's an engineer in the energy field. And she says when she's running, she gets some great ideas. When I was into biking, doing a lot of biking, poetry came to mind. For some reason, I had poetry come to mind. Not necessarily good poetry, because it was usually mine, would come to mind. But those, I think, too, are distractions from just sitting and being in your body. When you're running, again, if the mind is throughout your body, there's a part of your mind that's working,
Or bicycle.
or bicycle riding, or even yoga poses. Even though there's a silence there, in the pose, I don't know, some of those poses are pretty painful, but just know that there is a difference in the resting. You can choose at any given moment how you want to rest. If you want to do it through distraction or avoiding, that's fine too, but you need to do it. Okay. What I'm finding is that when I ask people, so what do you like to do? What gives you relaxation? They say gardening, reading, exercising. I said, so when's the last time you did that? Oh, I don't remember. It's been a long time. So if it's a place to start when it comes to resting, then start there. But ultimately, just being with yourself, being silent. And yes, ideally 20 minutes twice a day with the mantra, not the mantra, but sitting 20 minutes twice a day has been shown physiologically to cause a lot of improvement in people's health and well-being and mental health as well. It's not always realistic for folks, is it? Yeah.
I would really, distinguish, a lot of the activities that people mentioned today from just distraction or avoidance. Video games usually are distraction and or avoidance. But certain mindful activities can help bring one's thoughts and attention to the present. And I think either way, like the silent meditation versus a walk or gardening, either of those are ways of holding space for yourself. To give
Yes.
yourself the opportunity to think or to feel or to not think.
Well, again, we want to get from suffering to a more balanced state, okay? And so if taking a walk, jogging, reading is what gets you out of suffering, one of the things I've picked up on lately are those sticker book puzzle things. I don't know if you've seen those. They're quite addictive, not really good for me, because I spend a lot of time, but they're puzzles and they're stickers, and I'm working on the book of Audubon paintings right now. He just have these stickers and stuff, like a paint by number, and again, it was stickers. There's no paint involved. Those are pretty fun. That's a distraction for me, but it does force me out of suffering and sometimes exhaustion. into another state of being. Okay? Where we'd like to get is into the silence and being, and as I was saying, in the meditation where we're talking, or the goal, if there is a goal, is 20 minutes twice a day, right? I tell people, don't start there, don't start with 20 minutes twice a day. I mean, if you can, you obviously live alone and you don't have kids or pets, right? Yeah. But if you can do 1 minute mindfulness exercises, where you might be washing the dishes, focus on how does my hand feel in the water? How do my feet feel in my shoes? How does my posture feel? You know, that kind of thing. And just focus on different elements in that moment. That is a practice of bringing your mind back to a center state, back to not necessarily rest in the pure form, but it is helping you to focus. And the more you practice that pathway of going from suffering, exhaustion, thinking to non-thinking, you're creating a neural pathway that if you're doing this in times when you're not stressed, you'll have more of an ability when you are stressed to find that pathway so that you can have more clarity in any decision you need to make in a stressful situation. Yes.
So what would you recommend for someone who has ADHD?
No, well, it depends on the person, doesn't it? You know, for ADHD, there's a lot of things out there that can be done that are doing kinds of things. But ADHD, I would not start them 20 minutes twice a day. You know, take 1 minute, set a timer if you have to, see what happens. When I started in 1983 doing transcendental meditation, I always kept the notebook with a pencil next to me, because inevitably I get in the middle of this thing and I think bananas, don't forget bananas at first. You really need to get bananas. Oh, mantra. Bananas. I can't forget bananas. So one of the things I did, which wasn't suggested by my TM teacher, by the way, TM method, is I'd write it down. Just one word so that I remember. And inevitably, boy, back to mantra. I didn't think about bananas for the rest of the 20 minutes. Okay.
So we've got the gas.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, yeah, we have to write that down. Yeah. But you give yourself grace. Okay. ADHD, you want to try things in smaller packages, right? Journaling, lists, sitting down and writing a compassionate letter to yourself. Those kinds of things that help you to focus. And then if you can get to the silence for a minute at a time, that's a place to start. Okay. So we hit rest. The next thing is what I suggest for self-care and balance. I'm not sure this is going to be a surprise for anybody, is connection. Now, there are aspects of connections that we need to talk about. But let me, you know, this connections. Connections can bring us to the source of suffering with support so that we've got the ability to deal with it. Coming together in a group is very important. Coming together one-on-one with other people. For me, it's a dachshund. That's a whole nother story. That's probably one of the distraction, right, by the way, or avoidance. So again, connecting with other people also gives us the ability to hear other choices and other reactions that other people might make that we can modify and use for ourselves. Okay. One of the things about connections, though, that I do want to talk about first. I thought it here somewhere. Oh, here it is. It was on the posted on the next page. With connections comes the need for, wait for it, boundaries. I hate using that word a lot because connection and boundaries don't sound like they're compatible, but they really are. Okay, and let me just read for you a bit here. boundaries are complex. Okay, setting boundaries, we talk about healthy boundaries, you know, making sure you're not around toxic people, so these healthy boundaries kinds of things. What I'm going to encourage people to do is a way to set up healthy boundaries, is to do it with compassion. And that's not just compassion with the other person, that's compassion for yourself. How many of you have seen on your cell phones now, because we didn't don't get color ID from landlines, right? Oh, she's calling. I think about a voicemail. Healthy boundary. Maybe. Or the next time, oh, she's calling. I'm gonna pick this one up. I've got the energy, I have compassion within myself, I have the resources that I can talk with her, right? I'm not gonna get into whether it's your mother or not, okay? But just know that setting boundaries is complex. It's not a right or wrong to it. But we do need to know that it is somewhat counteractive to connection. And because oftentimes what I see people who are in overwhelm do is they isolate. Okay, and that's not helpful. I don't care how much meditation you do in a day. If you're not having some connection, then it's not probably going to help you balance. Now, I would like to say balancing your mental health, it's like, okay, you've got these, you know, techniques or ideas, and there's lots of lists. Just go to Chat GPT and say, list self-care ideas. It'll spit out a lot. It's not something that you're gonna be able to move the fulcrum right to the middle and boom, your life's gonna be balanced. Life doesn't work that way. The fulcrum is always moving. Okay, and when you get to that center point, that's great. Know that that's not gonna last forever and ever. So you're gonna have to develop skills while you're there. It could be journaling, it could be doing puzzles, it could be gardening, it could be, you know, whatever, to get that fulcrum back. Okay, could be taking a day off work, or 2 days, or a week. You know, it could be volunteering to find some balance. But always do it with compassion. There is, yes, there is a approach to conflict resolution, a theory put out there by Kwame Christian. And he's written a book, the book is, if I wrote that down, Finding Confidence in Conflict. And he is the one that coined the terminology compassionate curiosity. I would sometimes want to flip those words. If I'm not curious about it, I'm probably not going to be able to be compassionate about it. But compassionate curiosity is one way to know when you need to set boundaries or not set boundaries. Okay, when you've got the resources, when you have the compassion. Okay, another book that I really like about conflict would be a book by Amanda Ripley called High Conflict. The book that my daughter turned me on to a couple of years ago. Very wonderful book, by the way. It's very well written. There's a lot of examples. I'm going to go off note here because I think I'm almost through most of what I wanted to get to, but there's something that is just hitting me that might be helpful for you guys when it comes to how do I deal with, you know, not being overwhelmed and seeing the good in things when everything seems pretty bad. I mean, I tell you, I had a client last week tell me all the things she was concerned about, you know, the Gaza issue, the immigrant issue, the fear of this, the fall of democracy, all this stuff. She said, I'm living in Jumanji. You know that movie? Yeah. She said, I feel like I'm living in Jumanji. And so one of the things that I like to tell people about is the practice of grace. I don't know what grace means to you. Some people define it as luck. Some people, define it this as the good stuff. No. But grace is something that I akin to like the air we breathe. We know when it's not there. Okay, we know when there's not grace. So how do we identify and put into practice the consciousness, the immediate consciousness, our own personal awareness that we have been surrounded by grace? There's an exercise I do, I've been doing it for years, every night. I've got 4 questions. I've got my to-do list. I do carry a clipboard around with the operator, by the way. On one side is my to-do list. On the other side is 4 questions. And I answer these questions every night, okay? The first question is, what surprised me today? I won't put the whole thing on there. What surprised me today? What inspired me today? Okay. What touched my heart today? And then the last one. What act of service did I do today? Okay. These are all qualities and aspects of grace. This is how we identify and where we might be able to start with our practice of compassion. What surprised me today? Anybody? What surprised you today?
Well, my wife had a beat scan by the time I got home.
There we go. Grace in action. There we go. Anyone else? What surprised you today? A friend of yours dying. Okay, so you're experiencing life and loss. And it's somewhat of a grace that you have the resources to be with that one. Okay. Anyone with what inspired you today? That's a body that. So what inspired you today? Oh, that is a surprise. Yeah, that would be the first one. That would be on my.
Inspired listening to Ezra Klein from Matthew Epstein. It's fabulous.
Oh, is that on a podcast?
It's not podcast.
Okay, Ezra Stein. Nice. I'd like to hear about that. I want to write that down.
It's very good.
That was inspirational for you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I volunteer once a week in an English class for immigrants. And I was there today and they inspire me. I mean, they've had a hard journey and are still doing it, but they're ready to keep going and keep learning and be joyful.
That's nice. Was there any specific story that they told you about?
Not today,
Okay.
on some days they have, just, their willingness to learn and to be.
Okay, that's nice. How about what touched your heart today?
My daughter made me dinner for her 2 friends. But I didn't have to be a part of it, which I usually am not anyway. I came downstairs and she had made dinner for them and they were sleeping.
And that touched your heart to see them, yeah, they have that fun. That's great. Anyone else, what comes to her? Yeah,
The birthday card that I received today from all of my staff. And the messages that they wrote in the card.
oh, happy birthday, by the way.
But it was-
That's great, that's great. What act of service did you do today?
I've shared this meeting, with a bunch of people that don't, but.
Yeah, no, they may be there, maybe,
No, that one.
Okay.
But, so,
You did, that's an act of service. How many of you went to the store today and smiled at the cashier and said thank you? Yeah, act of service. It can be that little. It can be writing, you know, a $500 check to a organization that you really want to support. It can be going up to that young person who organized the march and saying, you did a really good job. You know, there's all kinds of ways. Now, I have to admit, not just in with this alone, I do tend to give myself the ability to be humorous from time to time. So what inspired me today is that I did not hit that person upside the head with a 2x4. What act of service? He did not get hit by that 2x4. So make sure, I wanna leave with that little bit of laughter. Humor can be a big part of this. Okay, even through the loss, the pain, the suffering. Make sure that you don't lose touch with that as well. Compassion is the big one. Say humor comes in a close second. Okay. Do you have any questions for me?
so with grace, the way I see grace is kind of let it be, but then also notice how it is.
Yes, yeah, it's going back to that becoming conscious, yeah. Yeah, so becoming conscious that we're always surrounded by grace. And that in our act of service, we influence that grace as well.
And did it without saying, all right, what act of service can I do right now? This is, do it.
Yeah. That's why I answer these questions at the end of the day. I don't necessarily think of them and, oh, I'm gonna write that on my grace questionnaire. Not with my bananas. Bring meditation. I sit down and I try to be conscious of my day.
Isn't forgiveness part of grace? Or is that just my religious upbringing?
No, and I love the question, and that's a whole nother lecture. But I do think that forgiveness is an internal process. And it's not always for the person to be forgiven, like I forgive you. It's for you to be able to let go of the control that insult had. Okay,
It's a loaded word.
it is a very loaded word because it comes with a lot of baggage and we often put stuff to it, like forgive and forget. Really? Not, that's not a thing. I don't know how many of you have watched this series. I never thought I would watch this series, but I got something to it called The Chosen. It's an interesting series. I mean, I kind of like the dramatization, I like the metaphorical, symbolic stuff that they're doing with that, but there is one episode that I thought was really important. And it was where Peter, to give you a little background, not Peter, Matthew is the tax collector, right? And in this program, Matthew, they made his character more autistic. No, that seems that one. But don't get me started. But Matthew was a tax collector. he oftentimes was collecting and collected taxes from Peter and his brother Andrew. And there was, according to this telling of the story, there was a time when they were gonna lose their ships and lose their livelihood because Matthew was being so demoted, I don't have the taxes, kind of thing. So they all go off and they're following Jesus right away, and Matthew is trying to become, you know, the best person he can be. Peter is not letting him off the hook. He's treating him very poorly, you know, doing, you know, I don't want to be around him. He's not a nice guy. He did this to me in the past. So Jesus did a sermon about forgiveness. And Matthew took all this in. And he goes to Jesus at night. He says, hey, I need for you to talk to Peter. Because you were talking about forgiveness. And I'm a different person now. And I'm following you. And I changed my ways. I'm a whole different person. And Peter needs to forgive me, kind of thing. And Jesus looked at him and said, have you ever apologized? For what you did? And Matthew goes, well, no, I don't need to do that. I'm a different person. You can see that now I'm a different person. I'm a follower of yours, you know, blah, blah, blah. And Jesus said, that's really not how it works. You know, you need to apologize. And so it takes Matthew, according to this telling, a few days to kind of get up the courage to go to Peter and say, hey, you know what? I'm really sorry for, and he named it out, you know, for doing this, and then I did this, and then I did this, and this was not good. And I am so sorry, I just needed to let you know that. Peter got it. Because now he had no reason to be angry at Matthew, right? But he had to somehow come to grips with, I gotta forgive this guy that I've spent all this time not liking. I'm really hating and expending a lot of energy hating. So Peter walks off and he's like, and he goes to Jesus that night and says, what the heck? You know, you preached about this forgiveness, and what do you mean 70 times 7? You know, well, what is all that about? And Jesus is like, we're getting caught in the weeds there. You know, you forgive if you feel like you can. And it's totally up to you. A few days go by. And of course, as you know, in the storyline, then Peter says, okay, I forgive you. And they go on to be, you know, in the story by wonderful teachers. Forgiveness is loaded because in this culture and the way that the church has developed over time, it's become very transactional. Transactional, yeah. One of the things that I think we could learn from is that even though there was an apology and then forgiveness, according to the story of Jesus, he did say on the cross, forgive them because they don't know what they did. So in that regard, can we do forgiveness to somebody to let ourselves off the hook with the knowledge that they had no idea what they did was wrong? That's a hard one. Okay. That's one that I think, again, it's for another lecture. I'd love to do that sometime. But I need some more ideas. Okay. Any other questions? I thoroughly enjoyed this evening. And I would love to, if you have time to stick around, I know we've got about 10 or 12 more minutes left, but if you need to, you know, mull around, I'd love to talk with each and every one of you if I can. But do make sure that you take care of yourself. Have compassion. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a little closing announcement, if you wanna know any more about the Peace Education Center, you can talk to me. If you wanna know anything about the Quaker Meeting House here or Quakers, which is a great place to come to find community and peace and let some of those issues go for a while. You can talk to me, Vicky's a member here, Robin Melanie, has been coming here too, so. Raise your hand, and Bethany came for a long time.
I'm still connected, I'm still.
You are still connected. So,
The question is unrelated, but I was really hoping that someone here tonight would hear. We kept hearing about this thing tomorrow about Good Trouble Day. But I've not been seeing that it's very well organized. Does anybody know? Is something happening locally?
Yes, in front of Bingham County Health Department. So it's a demonstration. In support of Medicaid, and some of the other, social safety nets that are under attack.
thank you.
I think you're probably for. That sounds.
That's South Cedar.
Yes. There is, and tomorrow afternoon.
There is a fairly new Facebook group, Lansing Action Hub. And Mary Duma is trying to collect all the posters from all the actions and activities around the area and post them there, so. It's pretty much just posters of activities, pretty much. So
Lansing Action.
Action Hub on Facebook,
Thank you.
so join that and you'll start getting notices and things like that.
Laura, can you say the name of the book you recommended again
The,
for the people online? Yeah.
oh, okay,
Well,
there were a couple of them. Quickly, we see if I'm trying to take it. One is. Oh, here we go. One is high conflict. HIGH. High conflict, like up there, conflict, by Amanda Ripley. And the other book that I recommend is Finding Confidence in Conflict. And the author's name is Kwame, Kwame Christian.
I didn't see that.
Did you get that, Gloria?
I didn't get Christian's first name.
Kwame. Kwame.
Okay. And what was Amanda Ripley, you said?
Yes, for high conflict.
I still can't hear that, what you're saying. High?
High conflict, HIGH,
Okay, thank you.
and that's Amanda Ripley.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, Kwame's book is Finding Confidence in Conflict.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, all the Zoom people who came.
It was helpful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes. Other questions or comments? Things that you are doing that you think might be helpful.
Roll got a whole lot of things like that. This. That's very helpful.
But I'm in Marshall. Marshall's about a 40-50 minute drive from here. There's a fountain down there. I have an office in my home. And I see people in person and virtual and anyone.
The demonstration tomorrow is called Good Trouble Lives On. It's at the Bingham County Health Department's Jolly Cedar from 4 to 6 p.m. tomorrow. 4 to 6.
Oh.
Any other questions?
One thing I was thinking of was, you were listing your things, you talked about at night, the things that keep me up at night are the things that are currently going on in the political world. And I think one thing that might help me is to think of one specific thing I can do tomorrow and write it down. And say, I'm gonna go to sleep now, but when I get up, I'm gonna write this note to my congressman or post this or something. And see if I can think of one specific thing.
Yeah. There's a postcard action going on. I wish I could remember, she's on Facebook. And it's got justice in the title, but I don't remember the rest of it. But she's made up some really great postcards. And sometimes just printing off a bunch of postcards. And as issues come up, you know, writing the congressman on it. The anxiety, the keeping you up at night, that's a tough one. Yeah.
Signs of justice.
Signs of justice, that's it. Yeah. And she'll either send you the PDF of the postcards for free. Or you can have her send them on cardstock for you. What is her name? Signs of Justice, it's a Facebook page.
I have a comment. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I had a friend who doesn't watch, she can't watch the news, she gets pretty upset. And she heard of us having she journals a lot and I do too, but of having a what delights me journal. And she went to the dollar store and picked up about 5 little tiny notebooks and wrote on it, "This is your delightful journal." And it's really kind of fun. And it's not something I do every day, but to be aware of what delights you. And here's just a couple examples. I saw a little girl helping her grandma push a grocery cart, and the little child was a toddler. It was so darling. And then I watched, when I was sitting out this morning, trying to meditate and just enjoy the early morning, I watched this robin taking a bath in the bird bath. And those would be things I would put in my delight journal, or having an ice cream cone, you know, just little things. And to help, you know, when there's so much hard news on, and just looking for a delight, or just all of a sudden there's something that's delightful. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of fun. So
yeah,
just thought I'd share that.
The whole part about humor I find interesting too. We were, a friend of mine, not a close friend, but a guy I know closer with his family, passed away very suddenly about a week ago, and we were with the family then. And as we started talking about this guy, we found we were all kind of moving toward the funny stories. Remember the time we did this, or the time we said that, and, you know, and it was a sad occasion, but we were all laughing about it.
yeah. Humor can help build connection with others. I've not been to a comedy show where I've seen someone just sitting back and scowling the whole time. It does promote us to connect. Well, thank you.